In 2024, a Pew Research study found that among young people age 18 to 34, 69% of them still want marriage one day, and only 8% do not. Clearly, despite all of the cultural narratives about how marriage is oppressive and nobody wants that anymore, most young people, a vast majority of young people of Gen Z, still desire a traditional marriage. That's great. I love that. That's awesome. However, so many teens and young adults, so much of Gen Z today is being influenced by people giving bad advice that is leading our generation away from pursuing marriage, away from this idea of having a traditional marriage, the goal that most young people want, and towards a life of loneliness, despair, hopelessness. We have got to change that as countercultural young people. The individual I specifically want to highlight in this video, of course, is Alex Cooper. For those who don't know, Alex Cooper is the host of the podcast Call Her Daddy. The podcast is all about sexual promiscuity. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of this podcast because, frankly, nobody should listen to it. It's terrible advice. If you follow this advice, you will not end up like her, as we're going to talk about in a little bit. That being said, a couple of things that I want to highlight that she mentions, some of her life advice for dating and relationships is, for example, she's encouraging young women to sleep with guys on the first dates. She encourages the hedonistic, do whatever feels good culture that is so popular among our generation today. If it feels good, do it. And overall, she's promoting a lifestyle of sexual promiscuity in your teens and 20s. Now, before we talk about her pregnancy, the big story a few days ago, I really want to highlight why hookup culture, why sexual promiscuity, why sleeping around is very, very damaging to you. Before I do that, I really want to highlight this book, Hooked. It is by McElhaney and Bush. It talks about how the brain science of casual sex affects human development. Very, very interesting read. I highly, highly recommend you check this out. This book tells you all that you need to know about the neuroscience behind the dangers of casual sexual activity, pornography, all of that. And it's not even a Christian book, guys. So if you're not a Christian watching this, still recommend it if you're on a truth quest, which is what you should be on, regardless. That being said, why is hookup culture, why is what she preaches bad? Well, it really comes down to that lifestyle, sexual immorality, leads to hurt. Well, in short, a life of sexual immorality leads people to hurt. It's not loving. For instance, neurochemically, when you're having sex with multiple people and you're sleeping around your relationship to the next, constantly having different relationships sexually, that has neurochemical effects on you. You're bonding with everybody that you sleep with. And then when you break those bonds through a breakup, through just going to someone else, sleeping with someone else, that creates chaos in your life. It creates stress, anxiety, loneliness, depression. In short, leads you to experience a lot of hurt and regret. Not only that, but if you continue to live that lifestyle, you're going to end up with STDs of some kind, which is a terrible, so sad, hurtful thing to experience. The other side of it too, and particularly for ladies watching this and that listen to her podcast, is that you're just being used. You're just being used. You're just an object for a lustful guy to use, to lust over. He's being selfish. You are being selfish by sleeping around as well, because you're taking from something that doesn't belong to you, someone else's sexuality, which only belongs to that one person that you are going to spend the rest of your life with in a committed relationship, aka marriage. Just consider the entire narrative here of what this lifestyle does. So if you follow this advice, if you start in your teenage years, you just sleep around, you go from multiple relationships, and you continue to rack up a body count, as she says, and brag about it, and just be very self-centered and focus only on my sexual pleasure, sexual hedonism, you're going to end up in your 30s lonely, depressed, and have a lot of regret. Probably STDs too, which is terrible. That's not going to lead you to the goal, which we talked about at the beginning of this video, marriage. And I'm going to tell you, as a Christian guy, as somebody who's saving my virginity for marriage, that's not appealing to me. Women who follow that lifestyle, that is not attracted to a godly, disciplined Christian man. It's not. And you're going to attract the wrong type of people. Attracting Christian men, we will lead you right. We will actually lead you to what you want, ultimately, what most young people want, which is a marriage, a happy marriage. But if you follow this advice, you're going to attract guys that want to hurt you and go to the next girl. So in short, if you follow Alex Cooper's advice, it's going to decrease your chances of actually getting the goal that you want, which is a marriage. If you want marriage, if you want a pregnancy, which we're going to talk about in a second, if you want that, don't listen to her advice. She's not even listening to her own advice. Again, going into that, obviously, as we know, because this is several days ago now, she is pregnant and she posted that on Instagram, and that's awesome. That's good. That's good. That's like a very traditional photo in a lot of ways. But all that is to say, she's not even listening to her own advice, because she gets married in her 20s, and then she's having a baby in her early 30s and living a very traditional lifestyle, even though she's not even preaching that. So again, guys, don't listen to her advice. Actually do the opposite if you want the outcome that she had. Now, again, she's very rich and famous and powerful, so she can avoid a lot of the consequences of this bad advice for herself. But for the vast majority of women listening to this, they're not going to be able to avoid that. You're not going to avoid those consequences. You're going to be hurt by this. It's going to lead you to loneliness, depression, and a ton of regret in the long term when you reach your 30s and you realize, wow, things are a little bit tight now in the dating pool, especially for somebody who has experienced what I have. And that's so sad. It's so sad. And I feel for these women who have been hurt by this bad advice. Now, before I get to why this whole story actually points to God's goodness, I want to point out, what does God say about sex? What is God's view of that? Ben Stewart has a great book. Let me find it. Pastor Ben Stewart has a great book called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. And in that book, he uses the example of fire to describe God's view of sex and why he gives us boundaries. He talks about how fire, when it's kept inside of a fireplace in a house, it produces goodness and warmth, and it lights up your house. It powers it heats you. Everything's good. But if fire gets outside of those boundaries, it will burn the house down and destroy your life. Sex is the exact same way, guys. God gives us boundaries with sex. He says, keep sex within marriage, okay? If we do that, it produces goodness and flourishing between a man and a woman because it's a bonding act. It's a mind, body, spirit act, bonding people together for life. And that's a good thing. He designed sex. Sex is not a bad thing. And if we take sex outside of his boundaries, outside of marriage, it will destroy us. It will cause chaos. It hurts people. And God loves us enough to give us boundaries with life. And if we don't follow those boundaries, we hurt ourselves and we hurt other people. God is so pro people that he's saying, hey, this is a good thing, but you got to enjoy this inside the proper boundaries. If you do that, then you and your spouse will have flourishing and goodness in your life. And that's why God says, 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. 2 Timothy 2:22 is another example. Flee the evil desires of youth and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace. Guys, with those verses, God is saying, hey, flee this lifestyle that Alex Cooper promotes. That lifestyle hurts you. You sin against yourself. You hurt other people. You're hurting your body. You're being used. It's not a loving, good environment for you. It's chaotic. And the same thing when we're young, I know we got raging hormones. We want sex. We do. But we've got to be disciplined because the evil one, the enemy, is using sex oftentimes to entice us to commit sin. We've got to flee the evil desires of our youth. We have to flee those lustful thoughts, the thoughts of that lead to pornography, that lead to masturbation, that lead to sexual immorality, sleeping with other people outside of marriage. That leads to hurt. But when we pursue righteousness, it leads to love, peace, joy. And peace is something that you cannot put a price tag on in today's culture. Now, how in the world does Alex Cooper's pregnancy and this whole situation actually point to God's goodness? Well, it's quite simple. She doesn't have to teach anything about God in her podcast. She can teach the complete opposite garbage trash that leads people to hurt, and she can still experience God's goodness through following his way of doing life. She probably doesn't, I don't even think she understands this, but literally, by following God's way of doing life, getting married, having a family. Now, obviously, not to say she's living the perfect Christian lifestyle. I'm not suggesting that at all. But the gist of it, of get married to one person, have children, and experience the joy of that. That is God's intent. And you can see goodness in that. And what it ultimately says, guys, is, and my prayer here is that she will continue to see God's goodness to the point where she might actually think, hey, wow, maybe there is something to this God after all. Maybe there's actually some truth in the Bible. If God says that we should keep sex for marriage and follow the structure of family as he created it in natural law, maybe there's actually something to the whole gist of maybe Jesus really is God. Maybe he did rise from the dead, all this other stuff. So I say that all to say it points to God in the sense of he can still have goodness in people's lives even when they're not following him at all. And I hope and pray that it will lead others to Jesus just from seeing the goodness of that. Because she's following God's way of doing life in that one particular context. And I hope that you seeing that, and maybe her seeing that, my prayer is down the road, she will think, and you might think, hey, man, you know, if God designed sex and God designed marriage to be this way, and it leads to so much goodness and joy and safety and security and stability in my life, maybe the rest of the Bible is true. Maybe the Bible, what God says about money, or what God says about character, about following Jesus, about opposing sin, being against sin, that he died on the cross for our sins, that he rose from the dead. Maybe all that's actually true. I really want you to think about that if you're on the fence about Christianity. She's literally not even following her own advice. So one, don't listen to her advice. And two, hey, God is still good, and maybe, just maybe, everything that he says is true. Just want you to think about that. Don't listen to Alex Cooper. Save yourself for marriage. Get married. Have kids. And see God's goodness in that. Think about that God actually is good and what he says is actually true and it actually works the way he designed life to work. And listen to this show instead. Subscribe, like the video, and as always, guys, be countercultural.